morning, gentlemen. Wonderful weather. I think let's have a few words on the revenge of Russia. I will use these words. I think all of you have read or maybe seen that famous play by William Shakespeare, The Merchant of Venice. And there's a gentleman called Shylock. He wants his pound of flesh. That's the deal. And he has to be given to it. And that is the crux of the whole issue. Shylock is a Jew. I'm going to relate it to what's happening in Israel now. And what's happening is pretty serious because the Russians have threatened to put their troops on the border with
I may be able to come outside tomorrow.
Israel and Syria. That's a very, very serious thing as far as Israel is concerned. If Russian troops are going to man the border between Syria and Israel. And that means the Israelis will not be able to move full scale into Syria if there is some problem, like they have done in the case of Hamas and the Gaza Strip. Well, gentlemen, that's the crux of the issue. Russia is making its presence felt in the Middle East. That's the point. And why are they doing it? Syria, of course, is their ally. But they're doing it because the Americans treated the Russians the same way in the Ukraine. So it's something called tit for tat. Like Shylock, the Russians want their pound of flesh also. Now, what happened in Ukraine, you all know. Ukraine was made into a frontline state by America against Russia. Idea was to see that he could break the Russian Empire, the Russian Federation, into 3 or 4 more states, so that Russia is finished forever. That has been the view of very many American famous commentators, including John Mearsheimer. He said the same thing. The Americans have had the plan to dismember Russia. That's why they went into such a big way as far as Ukraine is concerned. Weapons, sophisticated ones, were all handed over to Ukraine, and the war dragged on for 2 years. Russians couldn't win. Fair enough. But you see, there's an old saying, you can't have the cake and eat it too. You can't keep on doing everything your way and you think you're going to win all the time. It doesn't happen that way like that. So then came something which the Americans didn't expect. The assault by Hamas on Israel. 10,000 rockets, 1,500 Israelis dead. Israel had to react, and that opened up a front and gave the Russians the breathing space they wanted, because America was, as it is, getting tired of the war in Ukraine. They don't know what to do. Zelensky's been in Moscow now, in Washington. He couldn't get much out of the Americans, because the Americans cannot go on fighting forever. You must remember the Hindu god Kuber, his coffers also got empty, and he had to go to the Lord Vishnu, please help me. All the Americans can keep on supplying weapons to Ukraine. Is that possible? It's not like something end all and a be all and something other things going to happen. So, gentlemen, I'm coming to the point now is that the Russians are paying the Americans back in their own coin. The Russians have come into the Middle East in a big way, and you know Vladimir Putin has just made a visit to Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. It was a fantastic visit, ceremonial, in which he showed his power, escorted by fighters. He landed there, got a tremendous honor, and despite the fact that the Americans and the stooges had, through the International Court of Justice, declared Vladimir Putin as a war criminal. I mean, one can't be that silly. You can't declare a head of state as a war criminal. I think if this is a war criminal, if you go by the Tokyo Tribunal, the way it was set up, the man is Zelensky and maybe Biden, the American generals who are going and fighting there in Ukraine for nothing. Russia had a relevant grouse. The plan was to ring Russia, and they had already started that, taking the Baltic states with them. Now, what was the purpose? Now asking Sweden and Norway to join? What was the purpose? Nothing. Finland, don't join. Nothing. And what for? There's no danger. And do the Americans think that these small countries like Estonia, Latvia, and all that goes last anything? You mustn't forget what Nikita Khrushchev told once Harold Macmillan way back in '61. What did he say? He told Mr. Macmillan, all I need is 5 thermonuclear bombs. England ceased to exist on the world map. They're very small countries. That's the point which you must remember. So, gentlemen, it's tit for tat. Shylock is there. The Russians have moved in, and they are now very clearly on the side of Hamas. What happens if the Russians give Hamas some SAM, surface-to-air missiles? It's possible. And this mayhem which the Israelis are continuing could lead to something else. I think the whole crux of the issue is Ukraine. If the Americans had not intervened in Ukraine, and the battle in Ukraine had not started, and Ukraine had been allowed to make a detente with Russia, this thing would never have happened. Russians were always with the Americans. They wanted a settlement, a reset of relations. They didn't intervene in Iraq, mind you, when their ally Saddam Hussein was unceremoniously, without a proper trial, hanged. Gaddafi, they didn't do it. But every day is not Sunday, friends. And that is where the Americans forgot about it. They thought they were omnipotent. They forgot the fact that they got a big licking in Afghanistan. They thought they were going to still continue their old tricks. I wish Donald Trump had been there. Things would have been much better. He's a great chap. But unfortunately, he's been sitting outside now. He has the charges coming. I know we come back to power. No, there's another point. But if he comes back, maybe he'll salvage something. But if Biden continues and the Dems continue, God save America. So, gentlemen, the situation is bad for Israel. Russians manning the border, that issue is closed. At the same time, they haven't been able to win the battle in Gaza, which they should have. I haven't, as a military historian, as a man who's been a student of history and served in the army for so long, that how the Israelis could not subdue an area which is 30 miles by 12 miles. I mean, it's a small area. And they had 300,000 troops invading the entire place. That just about shows the efficacy of the Israeli army, number one, and the tenacious resistance being put up by the Hamas group. Now, Hamas is a terrorist organization. I'll be the first man to say that. And Narendra Modi, our Prime Minister, has really pointed that out. We cannot countenance terrorism. Throwing those rockets is a failure of the biggest order, not of Hamas, but of the American intelligence, the CIA and Mossad. I don't think nobody knew about it. Maybe Iran knew. We can't make any comment. But obviously somebody knew, somebody planned it, and the Western world didn't know. So there's so many issues involved, gentlemen. And it was intelligence, Ukraine, all these in the combination put America on the back foot now. And America have to take a superhuman step to get out of it. I think the entire world is ganged up against Israel now. Israel got legitimate grouses. But the fact of the matter is, they don't have a single friend other than America as it stands. Even the Western world is touching Israel with long sticks, As far as India is concerned, it's changing its stance overnight. And that's something which the Indians are always famous for. They never stick to anything and there's no character. So one day you support Israel, next day you vote against Israel. Narendra Modi has to give an explanation what's happening. And despite supporting Israel earlier and then going against their own vote and saying now there should be a ceasefire, they had abstained in the last resolution, but this time India voted in favor of a ceasefire. What changed within a month? And Modi and company must have thought that the OIC, the Organization of Islamic States, is going to give a wink, to what India has done to Article 370. They haven't done it. They have condemned it. They said we don't recognize it. So what's the use? And what's the use of just alienating the only country in the world which is your ally, that is Israel? India's got just one friend and you alienate that. Well, I don't know what sort of politics you can say, but it just shows that it's a decrepit leadership, Happens, gentlemen, part of life. But we hope Mr. Modi is going to have a retraction. He'll think over what's he done. In the meanwhile, I'll request you all to subscribe to my channel, share it with your friends. Wonderful weather. I think you're going to like it. And let's see what the Russians have up their sleeve. Putin can breathe a little more freely now. He's got a leverage against the Americans, and the Americans got themselves to blame for it. Goodbye, gentlemen. Take care. God bless. Subscribe to my channel. Come back for more. And I close now. Take care and look after yourselves.